Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Robyn Orfitelli. I'm the chair of Sheffield UCU. The meeting that we're holding today is jointly hosted by all of the trade unions here at the university. So Unite, Unison, UCU. We also have members of GMB here at the university, but we don't have any officers from GMB here today. The reason that we've called this meeting is we want to talk a little bit to all staff at the university about the dispute that's currently going on between all higher education unions and UCEA. Now, UCEA stands for the University and Colleges Employers Association, and it is the representative body for our employers. All 5 of the trade unions that make up the higher education sector, so that includes Unite, UCU, EIS, GMB, and Unison, are either currently in dispute or are moving toward being in dispute with the employer. And all 3 of the unions that represent most of the staff here at Sheffield are either have declared an intention to ballot for industrial action or are moving in that direction right now. I'm one of the negotiators for UCU with the employer. So I negotiate along with comrades from Unite and Unison, GMB, and EIS with the employers organization. And so I'm going to start the meeting by very briefly giving you a short introduction to negotiations this year. Now, the way that negotiations work, all of the joint trade unions come together after seeking feedback from you, our members, and via various democratic structures and via just our speaking to people in our branches, and we put together a yearly claim. This claim is submitted very early in the calendar year, and then we begin negotiations with the employer in the spring. Now, when we entered into the negotiations this year, it was already abundantly clear that inflation was going to run rampant. And this was very early in 2022. The unions made it very clear that we expected a pay rise that was in line with inflation. The response from UCEA, which is a response that we're getting used to at this point, but shouldn't be under any circumstances, was to come back and say that it simply isn't possible to give a pay adjustment that is in line with inflation. This is something that they have said repeatedly for almost 2 decades now, and there comes a certain point when you cry wolf where the townspeople no longer believe you. You cannot point at governmental elections, Brexit, another election, Brexit again, a pandemic, and just repeatedly claim that it's not possible to adjust workers' pay and to effectively cut it year on year. This year, the pay cut that they've offered us, I hope that the pay spine is sort of familiar to everyone here. This is the spine that workers' pay is indexed to across the entirety of the higher education sector. Well, up to point 20 this year, and 20 is roundabout grade 5 at the University of Sheffield. There was a pay increase that is above 3%, in some cases only a tiny bit above 3%. At the very bottom of the pay scale, as much as 9%. Now, all of you will be aware that inflation is at this point in double digits, no matter what metric of inflation you're using, and it's set to rise even higher, possibly as high as 15% by the end of this year. And given that these estimates keep getting adjusted, it could go even higher. Above point 20 on the spine, though, so that's everyone starting partway through grade 5, going all the way up. The adjustment is only 3%, and this represents the largest pay cut, real terms pay cut, that has ever happened in the history of new JNCHES, of sector-wide negotiating. So what we're facing is an enormous pay cut at a time when inflation is running rampant. UC have also indicated that they're absolutely unwilling to consider any sector-wide discussion of workloads. So this includes not only sector-wide baseline standards for workload modeling and keeping workloads under control, but they're not even willing to consider negotiating over a 35 versus 37-hour week and standardizing that. The unions have demanded a standardized 35-hour week across the sector. Now, we do have that here at Sheffield, but there are lots of institutions where people are working extra hours each week, and that leads to further pay disparity. UC have also indicated that they're not willing to consider any sector-wide standards that would reduce the casualization that's running rampant in this sector that impacts all of our unions, nor are they willing to consider anything other than writing reports or having very toothless working groups on issues of pay inequality on the basis of disability, race, and gender. So this is where we are, and that's the state of negotiations. I'm happy to take questions about this, but what I'd like to do now is I'd like to pass on to, I believe Natalie is going to speak on behalf of Unison. We're now going to have 3 very brief from each of the unions presentations on what does this dispute mean for you as a member or potential member of this union. So Natalie, would you mind kicking off? Unison is in the middle of a ballot right now, so huge solidarity to Unison.
Thanks, Robyn. Hi, I'm Natalie, everyone. I'm the co-chair of the Unison University of Sheffield branch. Nice to see you all. It's very well attended, which is good to see. I'll just kind of give you, I guess, a bit of a background of what our current situation is, because as Robyn said, we are balloting at the moment. The ballot launched in July, so it was the 22nd of July, and we had a launch meeting just ahead of that on the day before for our members to talk about where we stand on this. Obviously, it's an interesting timing because it was around the time that the grade boundary discussions were just concluding as well. So we've had to be obviously very clear that this is a separate dispute. It's about a national pay offer and not the local negotiations that have been undertaken. Back in May, we kind of started May 2022. Unison nationally, the higher education section ran an online consultation asking members to vote on accepting or rejecting the offer that UC had put forward, and it was quite overwhelming. 83% of all members rejected that. And we're very clear, you know, this is a big majority of people were not happy considering everything that Robyn's mentioned about inflation and rising costs. We were then, as a branch committee, asked to decide whether to take part in a ballot. So the Unison's policy is to disaggregate the ballots, which means that each branch has one individually. And that was kind of confirmed. They had another meeting to say, yeah, are we going to definitely do it disaggregated again? And they confirmed they would. So we had to opt out or vote to take part in the ballot. We had quite a short time frame, so we sent out a mini survey to our members just to get an idea of a bit of a feeling of how the majority of people felt, and the majority of people who replied to that survey with us directly said they wanted to move to a ballot. And it was really important to us as well, because obviously we don't want to take that choice away from members. Members should always decide on whether they want to vote to strike. We weren't saying, yes, we're not deciding, yes, we're going to strike on behalf. That has to go through the democratic process. So we felt really strongly about going to a ballot. Unison is calling for all members to vote yes to strike action. As we've said, the rising cost of fuel, food and energy means we can't actually afford it. Most of our members sit around a grade 5, and we've also got a lot of members on the lower grades as well. And you know, even on grade 4, I'm on grade 4, and I think my rise is 4.5%, which is like nowhere near enough. And we want members to tell the unions, the universities, that by voting in this ballot. Obviously, the university kind of praises staff about our response to the pandemic and about how we've kept everyone safe and kept everything going as normal. But actually, it kind of feels like when it comes to like the budgets and things like that, they're not really prioritising us in that, which is why Unison is saying, you know, we really need to make our voice heard on this. It's obviously been a decade, like over a decade probably, that the rises we have had have been below the cost of living. So they're not really a pay rise, they're pay cuts. So not only are we wanting to kind of increase wages for this round of pay taking into considering inflation, but we also want to make up some of that money that we've lost over the last 10 or so years in real terms pay cuts. So yeah, that's kind of our main view on it. Like I said before, most of our members are only going to get the 3%, but we have got a lot who would get slightly more. Although the lower paid staff, for those people, it's the slightly higher rise was to take them out of having minimum wage pay, basically. So they were already on a very low wage in the first place. So yes, they may have got a higher rise than others on slightly higher grades, but actually their pay in the first place was so low that it's not really a justification, it's not a justification. So yeah, it's just really important that we all come together. I know that the other unions are thinking about, well, at least moving towards balloting or starting a ballot imminently, and it's just really important that we stand united. The more of the, if all of the unions can ballot and vote to strike, that puts us in a much stronger position than if no one does or if one does. So yeah, it's just about getting out there, spreading the word, making sure people are aware they can vote on this if they're a member, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you. If you have any questions, obviously, please ask.
Thank you so much, Natalie. We've now got Matt, who's going to speak about what the upcoming ballot and this dispute means for Unite members.
Hi, everyone. Just to introduce myself, I am Matt Eyre. I'm a manufacturing engineer of a nuclear AMRC, and I'm also the acting branch secretary for Unite at the university. So Unite has a very unique makeup of membership at the university. We have members from cleaning, portering, security, all the way up to technicians who are very specialised and brilliant at what they do. And I think it's important to kind of make the differentiation, but there may be some of our members at the moment, given the grade boundary work that we did, who are saying, what are we complaining about now? You've got us a good rise. And it's important to say that the grade boundary work was a commitment from the university to not pay poverty pay. And that should be our baseline, really. Like we shouldn't even be considering the university paying poverty pay. And anything from UCA that we negotiate nationally should be on top of that. That should be our way of keeping up with inflation and making sure that nobody is getting poorer as the years go by. So I don't think I need to tell you how the cost of living is affecting you. Unite recently did a pay survey and 98% of you told us that you're struggling with the cost of living. So I think it's important to contextualize that, really. Over the last 12 years, UCU's website will happily show you that higher education establishments have dropped 20% against inflation, at least 20%, I should say, really. And the current UCR offer, like Robyn says, represents the biggest real terms pay cut in a single year. So anyone who was paid 20 grand 12 years ago, that's only got 16 grand's worth of spending nowadays, which is horrific when you think about it in real terms. Over those years, we've had various packages of the same failed economic policies from government. We've all felt public sector cuts, and that's kind of read across in the institutions that we worked for. And all of this is coming to a head, really, with the current crisis. Inflation skyrocketing. The Bank of England is aggressively raising interest rates to try and cut spending, but what they don't realize is that we don't have any money to spend, and all it's doing is increasing the burden on people with borrowed money, like we all do on our mortgages. And they're telling us that we shouldn't ask for inflation matching pay rises, which is outrageous. At the same time as we struggle to pay, gas and electric companies are making obscene record profits, and Liz Truss, a potential future Prime Minister, is telling the media that we shouldn't consider those profits evil, just a symptom of successful business. And the reason I'm going on around background around, the country as a whole is because it really does have parallels with the university as a single entity. Our £48 million surplus reported last year, our Vice Chancellor's 300 grand a year wage, and the minimal investment that we've just seen into the grade boundaries, and the lack of willingness to stand up for University of Sheffield employees in the JNCHES pay negotiations. So whilst we as workers suffer, they're looking to protect their own backs as usual. And that's kind of the crux of all this. In a time of economic uncertainty, the ones with the power already will protect their interests at our expense. We've all seen restructures, efficiency savings at the university, and those have impacted our members, but not those in charge. So like Natalie's already said, we as a collective need to show them that we are the ones with the power. So with that in mind, Unite nationally has already decided to do a consultative ballot on the UCIA offer, with the questions being, do you accept the offer, yes or no? And if the offer is rejected, will you consider industrial action? It's very important to say that Unite will never let anyone be starved back to work when they offer strike pay. Because of the proximity to the grade boundary ballot, we have decided to move a little bit later on to what Unite nationally have said, so give you a bit of breathing space. But anyone who is a member will be able to say that this is not enough, and we cannot accept the biggest real-term pay cut in history, and we can collectively demand better. Finally, just a bit of solidarity with Unison. You know, they are doing it, they're way ahead of us, but solidarity. I'll just open it up to Martin Bentley, our branch chair, in case I missed anything, because I do like to get sidetracked.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think you've covered just about everything, mate. I think it is just important to point out about the poverty pay stuff. So the universities move to make sure that it doesn't pay poverty pay in any case, takes the maximum pay award at this university to 6.8%, I think. So that added to the amount of money that's coming from the university with regards to the pay boundary stuff, actually still leaves people way short of a cost of living rise. So everybody across this university will be taking a hit against the price of inflation. So it's not just those at the top of the scale or mid-scale that are going to be affected by this, even those right at the very bottom. Even with the work that we put in to try and make sure that the university was paying a reasonable amount of pay to its lowest paid workers, will still be taking a pay cut this year. Really important to point that out. I'd like to just offer my solidarity with UCU colleagues and with Unison as well for the ballots that they're running. We will be running ours very shortly. I'm sure it will go to ballot. And it's time to stand up, guys. If you value your work at the university, they ought to value yours. It's time to stand up and say enough is enough.
Thank you so much, Martin. There's not much more to say after that, but I just want to briefly add a couple of comments from the UCU side. What does this mean for us? And I want to reiterate what Martin said about that grade boundary work. That grade boundary work wasn't meant to be in response to the cost of living crisis. This is meant to be in response to the fact that our university has had grade boundaries that are out of line with other universities. And we have been negotiating this for years. Now, it just so happens that the cost of living crisis really put a fire under this university to go back to this work and to take it seriously. But we don't want to think of that work as being, this university's management magnanimously trying to help us in the cost of living crisis. This is redressing a wrong in the way our grade boundaries have been structured. And on top of that, our sector owes us pay that keeps up with inflation. They owe us not a pay cut every year on year. And for UCU members, we've been fighting this. We've been in the trenches trying to fight this for years. And I know that this dispute right here and this upcoming ballot is us saying yet again, please vote for this. But this fight is too important. We have to keep fighting it. And every step that you take in sort of an employment battle of this magnitude, every step that you take up until the moment that you win, feels that there's this question, there's this, are we losing? Should we keep having faith in this? But we can win this. And UCU is in particular moving towards an aggregated ballot right now. And what this means is that if we go out, we all go out together. Every single one of us. And that's something that this sector has never seen. And the fact that Unite and Unison are also balloting alongside of us means that at this university, not only can we potentially have every single UCU member of HE out together, and not even members. Those of you who aren't members, first of all, please do join us. But second of all, you can join us on the picket lines. Everybody at this university who's part of this bargaining unit is allowed to join us on the picket lines and join the union that very day and engage in strike action. So we're at a place where we could actually really all stand together and say, we deserve pay and working conditions that treat us with respect. And we need it. And we all have to send in these ballots. We all have to make sure that we stand together for every single worker, but also stand up for ourselves, because solidarity is really important, but also it's okay for us to say, I deserve better. I deserve an employer that treats me with respect. And all of this can be combined.